What's good, guys? It's Ilsun 4K, and after a long hiatus, we're finally back with a brand new episode of Terror Talk here on ILTV, where if it's pop culture, you know it pops up here. And today, we're going to talk about something a little bit more mainstream versus something older or an obscure gem I might have found on Netflix. Today, we're here to talk about the latest installment in the Evil Dead series, Evil Dead Rise. Now, as you just heard me say, this is the 5th film in the series, and all of you know that, but what none of you probably know is the fact that the first Evil Dead is actually my favorite horror film of all time. Yes, all time. And that's rather ironic when you consider the fact you know how much I love a good 80s slasher, that this film series does not feature a slasher at all whatsoever. It is strictly a possession series movies based around the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, the Book of the Dead, bound in human flesh, written in human blood, and whatever poor son of a bitch happens to stumble across it and play the recording of it by the poor son of a bitch beforehand that deciphered it and turns themselves into a demon and just continues carrying chaos onward for the whole film as the possessions just move from one person to another to another. You get the idea. Now, what's really cool about the Evil Dead series is it actually wasn't just a successful movie series, it spawned a successful TV series on Starz that lasted for 3 seasons and even had the original actor, Bruce Campbell, from the first 3 films come back and reprise his role as Ash Williams, and it featured some awesome effects, incredible acting, hilarious slapstick comedy, and some really cool horror legends from both the past and the present being in that series. The really cool thing, though, is this one right here, Evil Dead Rise, takes the familiarity of the movie series, A Cabin in the Woods, and almost completely obliterates it and places it into a new environment with a new atmosphere and even a new higher stakes, as the people who are getting possessed aren't a bunch of rowdy college kids out to have a good time, but it's actually a family-based affair with the mother being possessed and the children running around for their lives as their aunt tries to save them. Again, a really unique twist on a very familiar series that can essentially be put in anywhere and any time period and still be made fresh and exciting, and that makes me look forward to the fact that there's supposedly another one in the works. But right now, we're going to take this time to review and look at this film right here, Evil Dead Rise, so make sure you like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and stick around as we take a look at this right here on Terror Talk. Now, I know I said this film takes place in an entirely new environment, but being as awesome as this film is, the opening scene is a huge nod to all the past films by taking place in what? A cabin in the woods with a bunch of young people trying to have a good time. Of course, one of these young people shows up feeling very ill and ends up in a bedroom lying down. One of the girls feels bad that this girl is upstairs and decides to go upstairs and visit her and finds her passed out. She starts reading a book and looks up to find this girl is now sitting up in the bed. Then, to make things extra creepy, the girl starts reading the book that she's reading out loud without actually looking at the book or the girl. A very trademark throwback to when they were playing cards and the woman who was possessed in the original Evil Dead could read the cards without looking at them from across the room because, well, that's how demonic possession works in this film. Of course, there's absolute mayhem, chaos, and gore. This girl kills everybody in some way, shape, and form, a little bit of self-mutilation, and the movie starts, and we find out that this actually takes place the day before the movie we're about to watch. We then cut to a woman who's tuning a guitar for a rock band on tour, named Beth, as she is the rock band's guitar tech who keeps everything in tune, and she finds out that she's actually pregnant with a child, and this is not the place to find out that you're going to have a kid while on tour. Beth decides the best thing to do is to quit the tour, go home, and actually start talking to her sister Ellie, who has 2 kids of her own that are teenagers and 1 child as well. Ellie goes and talks to Beth and tells her she can help her out and will give her advice after kind of throwing a few barbs at her for being really neglectful as a younger sister and not being there when she was needed, and tells her 2 children, hey, listen, go downstairs and get some pizza. I have to talk to your Aunt Beth. Upon going downstairs and getting this pizza, an earthquake happens, and they find out that there's a crack in the ground that leads to a cavern beneath this building, which actually used to be an abandoned bank. What do they find in there? Why, of course, the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, and they find a vinyl recording of a deciphering of said book. Moving forward from there, the one boy is actually a DJ and has the record needed to play this said vinyl, and plays the vinyl out loud, and we all know what happens from here. Somebody gets possessed. Who's that somebody? Ellie, their mother. Ellie gets possessed while on said elevator and comes back upstairs in an entire demonic possession scene that is just something you have to see to believe. From there, we see Ellie try and kill the 3 kids and the sister, and then goes on a killing spree for everyone else on that floor, and everyone is trapped in there because, of course, the earthquake has shut off all the power. Beth fights for her life to get the kids out as safe as possible and does her best to make sure none of them die, but unfortunately, this is Evil Dead, and people have to die in order for the effect to truly be there. The ending scene to this is really something else, as it really plays on the whole sisterly love affair throughout the film, and the fucked up things that the demon says to her sister are just something you can only know if you were someone's sister, including digs at her parents, how she's a groupie, how she's never going to amount to anything, and how this is all a mistake with her having a kid, and that if she kills her, it's doing her a favor. Some really deep cutting shit. Again, the ending is fantastic, how they tie everything together, because you know everyone who gets killed by this demon turns into a demon in the end. And as you can imagine, inside of a high-rise building, that's a lot of fucking demons. And I will not spoil the ending and how it ties into the intro of the film, but I promise you, you need to see it. You know, it's really easy for a movie to take elements of its past and kind of lean on them. And it almost feels like you might get that element for a split second in the intro to this movie when it shows itself inside of the cabin and doing all the things we know and love about the series. But I gotta say, that was actually very, very clever, because what it does is it shows you how much respect this movie is about to pay to the original. Because one could say that the 2010 film did a lot to pay respect to the original, but that still was a cabin in the woods and an entirely familiar element, right down to the fact it's a bunch of young people trying to have fun, or in that case, get sober. What we get here is actually a nod to the film and the original in so many ways, while being something completely new on its own. I have to say the casting in this film is fantastic. Ellie, Beth, Ellie's two teenage kids, and the younger daughter she has, fit together fantastically. The organic element of this as a family and raising the stakes just happens so naturally. You really feel like these are family members that love each other and want to see nothing but growth from one another, despite the fact that they're all in a down point in their lives, and even right down to Ellie and Beth kind of having that tension between them because they haven't really been there for one another, more so Beth for Ellie than vice versa, that when it finally does start to smooth over, you just don't get enough time to really appreciate it, because all of a sudden, next thing you know, Ellie's getting possessed and she turns into a Kandarian demon. In addition to that, not only is the family well cast, but all of the neighbors are well cast. The way they interact with one another, and they even know that Ellie's sister, Beth, might be a little bit of a groupie, really makes you feel like these people have lived together for quite some time together, and they're not just mishmashed people. Everybody is cast and played perfectly, which really raises the stakes, because once Ellie gets possessed, holy shit, this is the most demonic, evil, and foul Deadite we've ever seen in the series. I mean, she is absolutely off the wall. From the moment she walks back in that door as possessed Ellie and starts throwing those eggs in the frying pan and says some fucked up shit that nobody is ready for, it just goes straight mayhem from there. I mean, the things she says and does, the way that when she finally does get locked out of the apartment, she starts talking to her daughter, telling her to unlock the door. And while we're used to the Deadites being able to do that, switch between their evil versions and their non-evil versions, we're used to seeing them turn with a normal face. This time around, it's way more maniacal when we see that she is talking to her daughter through that little peephole, still looking absolutely insane. Speaking of looking absolutely insane, how about that makeup effect? Holy shit. The eyes, the way she's all cut up, the pale skin, the hair, the getup of everything. What the fuck? The scene where she pops out of that bathtub and screams and makes the water boil, we've never really seen anything that in-depth in the Evil Dead franchise in terms of the turning scene. Another thing that's really interesting to see how they pay respect to the original but do it on their own is, just like in the original, they find the Book of the Dead and they find the recording in an underground terrain, but instead of a basement, it's actually inside of an underground bank that apparently the original owner hung himself in. Creepy shit. I gotta say, I think my favorite thing about the film, though, is how much gore there is in this. There isn't that much humor at all, but the gore levels are through the roof. Everything gets used as a fucking weapon. We see a cheese grater, a tattoo gun, broken glass, a chainsaw, of course. I mean, everything is stand and deliver on what we know and taken to the next level in ways you can't imagine. Watching that cheese grater get slashed across Beth's leg is unbelievable. The scene where that kid is eating the fucking glass and turns to the pregnant girl and says, "Don't you hate when you have little sickies in your tummy," or whatever, referencing the fact that she's pregnant, is just... It's just so clever and well done. It's still grotesque. It falls in line with what you expect from the series while still being something completely new. I mean, everything is just an awesome throwback that you really have to pay attention to, and it isn't done in your face as a fan service, for the most part, but it's done in a way that makes you feel like, oh right, that did happen in the film. Don't be surprised if you watch this one and then go back and watch the original and see how much they really threw in there. And like I said, make sure you look up online the trivia for how much little elements in the beginning scene are even there. And the way at the end that it actually ties everything together in the cabin scene, which I will not ruin, is awesome. I mean, that ending fight scene alone is worth it. And the things that decapitated head says to Beth before the final scene, just fucking heartbreaking. I mean, grabs you right by the heartstrings, but still makes you glad what happens. Again, fantastic entry into the series and undeniable and remarkable. And I can't wait to see what's coming for the next one. You know, the one thing that's really hard to forget about this series, because there aren't that many movies of it, is this series is actually 40 years old. Plus, I saw the 40th anniversary screening at my local theater on October 18th, 2021, and it was an absolute blast being in the theater, seeing my favorite horror movie up on the big screen, knowing I might not ever see that again unless I start seriously hunting it around the country, which I just don't have time to do. What's really, really, really unique is the fact that this series only has 5 entries into its mainline series. I'm talking it has Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, Evil Dead, and then Evil Dead Rise, and all of them are fantastic. It doesn't have a bad entry in my opinion. Comment down below if you agree or disagree, that's for sure. But it's a reminder that less is more when you really think about it. I mean, even though it had 3 series of his TV series on Starz, that was something else, and it didn't really have any bad episodes. It might have had 1 or 2 per season, meh episodes at most, but it was never something that made me want to skip it or think, oh man, this didn't age so well. I can still watch that series right now and love it to death because it's executed. The series always seems to go into very awesome hands and is never mishandled or misjudged or used in a way where it's just trying to get a cash grab. It's always an organic affair, and this movie is no different than that. The way that it just takes the familiarity of the series and puts it into a whole new light and a whole new element is just done in a way that I just didn't expect. I didn't know how to handle the fact that this was an Evil Dead movie that wasn't going to take place inside of a cabin in the woods, but I actually did review the trailer when it first came out that you can go and check in the link below of how I felt this movie was going to be, and you could see even then I was really excited. I think the most exciting thing about the movie, though, is the fact that it's just a reminder that less is more. Furthermore, I am super excited about the fact that there is another Evil Dead series coming out with Bruce Campbell being involved with it as always and making sure that the series stays on and moves on in a way that only he can, because it's like his baby, even though he didn't create and direct it. He starred in it, and it's what changed his life, and the fact that he's so hands-on with it and making sure that it stays that way is really, really an awesome thing and shows how appreciative someone is for the art that changes their lives. I've recently had the fortune of being in a few small horror movies, including some really cool ones coming up, and it just, the way that really changes your life and puts you into a new light really makes you want to just give back to the industry in ways you can't explain, and that's what we're seeing happen with this series. It's giving back to the industry and the fans that made it what it is, and for that, I will be forever grateful as a fan. So that's it, guys. That's my review on Evil Dead Rise. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you comment down below how you felt about the film and tell me if I'm just too full of the series, if that's how you feel, and it was only a meh entry, or tell me how awesome you think it is. And don't forget, go and check out my Twitch on twitch.tv/illtv4k, where we do horror gaming every so often. I'm still working on a schedule, so that's why you should like and follow there and here, so that way when it finally does come up, you'll be ready with a notification. So again, guys, thanks for watching, and remember, it's IllTV, where if it's pop culture, you know it pops up here. You're watching IllTV, where if it's pop culture, you know it pops up here.